Welcome to Event Experience by Bizzabo, the podcast where we bring the best and brightest event experience leaders together to share stories, tips, and lessons learned from creating some of the world's biggest events. I'm Rachel Moore, your podcast host. Strategy is where an event starts and where it stops. Or does it ever stop? That's where we're going in this episode's discussion with Natasha Wood, Head of Strategy for FT Live, the events division of the Financial Times. Natasha adds the strategic lens to how we use and reuse event content, and you'll come away with ideas for how you can leverage content to achieve your strategic goals and ensure your attendees have an ongoing event experience. Let's get started. Our guest today is no stranger to the stage, whether that's behind the scenes or in the spotlight. She is not only an event aficionado, but also a motivational speaker, which I think is always awesome when I can get someone in here who is used to being behind the scenes, but also knows how to pick up a microphone, so to speak. For the past 17 years, she has helped execute events in the energy, infrastructure, and financial sectors, just to name a few. And today she joins us as the head of strategy for FT Live, and that is the events division of the Financial Times. Natasha Wood, welcome to the podcast today.
Hi, Rachel. Thank you so much. I'm super excited to be here.
I love that you're here and really appreciate you taking the time out. And speaking of time, I literally spent maybe 30 seconds just now describing to our audience what anyone might see if they go check out your LinkedIn profile. But I have a feeling you could probably expound a little bit. Can you tell us a little bit more about what goes on in your world as the head of strategy for FT Live?
Yes, absolutely. It's a bit of a catch-all term, my job title. On the face of it, I am responsible for defining the strategy for FT Live alongside our managing director, Orson Francesconi, and other members of the senior leadership team within the key functions, and then very much responsible for ensuring its execution. So I often have my program manager hat on to ensure that any of the key strategic programs that we have in place, whether that's related to technology, whether it's related to a particular event, or whether it's related to a particular theme, are being executed and utilizing all of the structures in my toolbox from KPIs, OKR frameworks in order to ensure that our strategy is being executed. I often divide my world into people, products, and processes. And I spend a lot of time thinking about our people strategy. Have we got the right people in the right roles at the right time? The processes piece, anybody in events spends a lot of time thinking about processes. It's actually quite an exciting place to be at the moment, especially with the evolutions we're seeing in technology and AI, and how technology can really support our efficiency and make sure that we're freeing up our time to do more strategic thinking. Product and proposition is probably where I spend most of my time, and that's what events are we running, whether it's in the infrastructure space, or should we be doing more in banking and finance, asset management, looking at the customer appetite, whether it's the value proposition itself, what are the types of events that we're running and why? Is it roundtables? Is it large scale conferences? Is it festivals? What's the customer proposition there and the value proposition? And then also within that product and proposition bucket is our technology. I really enjoy and spend a lot of time thinking about the use of our third-party technology to support our event proposition.
I'm exhausted, frankly. That's a lot. And I'm preaching to the choir here because everyone who listens to this podcast, event planners all around at all levels of title and experience. But we know there's a lot on our plates anyway. But you seem to have your hands in the thick of a lot of things, but it's all very intertwined. And I'll personally say, I just have a heart for anyone who is speaking to process. I love that you talk about that. And that's a huge part of your role is about finding the pathway forward on things that is efficient and saves people time and energy and money, but delivers the way it needs to. Let us get to know you with some personal questions. One thing we've been asking our guests lately, what are Your go-to on the ground event day shoes. What are you gonna be wearing on your feet when it comes to, "I gotta be around in the action"?
Yeah, it's the biggest decision that you can make and the most consequential decision you can make, right? The night before an early
Yes.
start is this is going to make or break my day. But I do have a pair of brown leather brogues, which they can take me from bag stuffing right the way through a day of meeting into the cocktail reception, and they keep me going without a blister plaster in sight.
Oh, golden.
Yeah,
That's the pair of shoes, yeah, if you especially if you can, like, wear it through all manner of engagement that you have to be part of, and you're like, "Yep, these are the same ones I had on this morning," so
yeah,
that's awesome.
yeah.
Is there anything that you're listening to, watching, or reading these days that you can't put down?
This is going to give you an insight into my soul. I've just finished binge watching back to back all three series of Only Murders in the Building,
Oh,
which I absolutely loved. I'm a huge fan of classic crime, and the
yes.
fact that this US show really captured the essence of the sort of interwar murder mystery, which is it's a British thing. I just loved it, absolutely loved it, and I cannot wait for the next season. On a more serious business note, I am reading Blue Ocean Strategy by W. Chan Kim and Renee Malburn. I'm really fascinated by their idea of defining a strategy that opens up a new market or creates demand by dint of just differentiation at low cost. And I'm super excited about that. I really think we spend an awful lot of time worrying too much about our competitors rather than
Mm,
thinking about the new products and the new product space that we can be opening up.
nice. Excellent, Rex. You just taught me something because I love Only Murders in the Building as well, not just because I really love the actors in it, but that's wild to hear that it's harkening back to kind of British crime dramas.
Yeah, yeah. Little known fact, I moonlight as an author. I've published one book, an espionage thriller, and I'm often pootling away on the next one, and I've got some classic crime ideas as well that I like to work
I love that you just shared
on.
that, and just going on a side tangent, but I love any of that crime, espionage. It's all fascinating, and God, it's like harkening back from the James Bond, and then we've got Jason Bourne
Absolutely.
and all
Yeah,
that stuff.
yeah.
Yeah,
Super
so cool.
glamorous, right?
It's
Yeah,
very glamorous, dangerous and glamorous, just what we all want. Good
absolutely.
combination.
Yes.
Is there a particular social post or a piece of media or even a hot take about events that you found interesting lately?
Yeah, not super recent, but from last year, the thing that really stuck with me was from Gartner's 2023 Marketing Benchmark Survey that stated that third party events are the second highest source of marketing qualified leads at 11% for marketers. And so underestimate the value of events at your peril, especially in this cookieless world that we're heading into.
Ooh, that's a good point. As much as we're excited about the things that tech is going to bring our way to help make our jobs easier, the cookieless era,
Yeah, it's scary. It's scary and it's not scary. If you work in events, then people are going to be coming more and more.
really good point. Ooh, I think you just laid the groundwork for more business coming all the way of the event planner. So that's wonderful. We have had discussions with guests on this podcast that range from the minutia of event tasks on the floor, on the day of, and in the action, all the way up to higher level vision of events in general. And I know you've talked a bit just now about what all that strategy means. How different is that from hands on work? So there's a like event business strategy, and then what else is there?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. So, a lot of your listeners will be event delivery
Hmm.
managers, and they're really
Yeah.
down in the weeds of that waterfall process of event conception, the way through to delivery, the marketing piece, the execution piece, the operational piece, sourcing venues, what happens at this point in the process. It's absolutely essential. Uh, what really matters for me is how those foundational processes roll up into our
Hmm.
business strategy. And we're a commercial organization. So, to your point about running very efficient, cost effective processes, that's a really important part of our strategy. So,
Yeah.
although I am not spending my days down in the weeds on the individual events, we run 200 plus events a year of
Wow.
different shapes and sizes and formats. I am looking with my colleagues, of course, how are we executing and delivering our webinars and How can
Mm-hmm.
we do that more efficiently, and how can we do more of them? How are we delivering and executing our roundtables or our large scale conferences? And I suppose that very much rolls it up into event business strategy. It's one
Mm-hmm.
pillar. I've mentioned the three pillars that I focus on within the
Yeah.
process piece.
When you talk about delivering events, different types of events to the different audiences you have, looking at the strategy behind that. And again, what you were saying, 200 or more events per year, which is a lot. And some of our event planners are like, I do
Right.
that all the time. So when it comes to Financial Times and the journalism piece, how does what you do inform or support that?
I can speak a little bit to FT Live's mission, and there are 5 parts of that mission. The first is we believe in the power of human connection. The second is relating to your question, we are the global stage where world's business leaders go to explore business critical issues and shape decisions. The third
Mm.
part, and this is the bit that really speaks to your question, is we are the live platform for FT journalism. I'll go
Ah,
through 4 and 5. We recognize that profitability is essential for our future success, which relates to our commercial orientation. And we serve our customers, our colleagues, and our stakeholders with integrity, creativity, and agility. And I really love this mission because it encapsulates all the key aspects of what we do here at FT Live. And to come back to your question around how we are positioned with our journalism, it is our raison d'etre. We are the live platform for FT journalism. So what you're reading in the newspaper translates onto the event stage. But what
mm,
makes it a super exciting product proposition for our attendees, whether they're subscribers or not, is that it's the most interactive form of our journalism, right? You get to hear from the journalists interrogating industry experts firsthand. You can pose your questions to them live within the auditorium or online. If it's a digital event, you can sit down next to them at lunch and have a chat about what you've just heard or the interesting things that you've read in the FT. That's the super exciting bit
yeah.
of our product being part of this amazing media brand.
We talk often about when our event planners are prepping content, everything from what people are going to see and feel and hear in the environment of an event, virtual or in person, but also the people they're going to hear from. On one of our just recent podcasts, we were talking about entertainment and choosing keynotes and things like that. And there's that star power there where it's like, ooh, do we want Ryan Reynolds or someone like that? But I love that you have this infused already a bit because with you being a journalistic entity, that has known writers who are personas in that environment. So there's that trust there. There's people who follow specific writers, journalists in FT where they can be like, oh my gosh, and I get to go meet them. I always love tapping to the fangirl part of events, but what a great draw that's inherent in your events already.
Yeah, it's not just the journalists themselves. They are a huge draw, and in different guises, they're a really big draw. If I were to take our weekend festival, which is our B2C festival, there are guys that are lining up. You'd think that, I don't know, George Clooney was speaking, but actually they're waiting to meet Rana or Martin Wolf or like that.
Hopefully your colleagues are listening to this podcast and like, oh my gosh, she just called us George Clooney of Financial Times. Awesome. Who wouldn't want that?
Yeah.
But that's great. Great classification. We'll be right back with more event experience after the break.
Ever wished your event badge did more than just display your name? Whether you're an event organizer, exhibitor, or attendee, Visibo's Click Smart Badge transforms the event experience. From interactive networking to real-time attendee insights to lead capture, the Smart Badge is the ultimate game changer for the events industry. Visit bizzabo.com/click. That's bizzabo.com/KLIK to learn more about the next generation of wearable event technology. Bizzabo, your partner for building conferences that captivate.
We're back with Natasha Wood on Event Experience as we contemplate content everywhere and not enough time to utilize it. You have particular interest in and definitely have some thoughts on content utilization. I think all of us think, yes, we know we need to utilize content, but does it actually get done? And there's always that aspect. And that's not just for event planners, that's for literally anybody who's in some way a part of creating content and then saying, yes, there needs to be more where this content can go. What do you think are the challenges around why event content is underutilized?
Yeah, I think there are lots of reasons, and we all say the same so often whenever you're having that conversation. We're producing so much content, especially organizations that are streaming or recording their live content. There is a wealth of content data there, and we all know what the opportunity is, but we don't quite know how to grasp it. And I think there are three areas in no particular order of priority. I think the first is that as event professionals, we're not necessarily wired to think about the post event experience. I know that back in the day when I was at the coalface delivering conferences, I'd get to the end of an event, done, move on,
Yes.
what's next? If I were running an event in Miami, I might sit by the pool for half a day and then I'd be thinking, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? I wouldn't be thinking, wow, what a trove of content I've got here. What can I do with it?
Mhm.
So I think we need to shift our mindset a little bit. And it is hard because there's always the next deadline to be considering.
Right.
The second point is it's quite difficult to really measure the value of that content and
Yeah.
therefore justify the investment of time that it takes. And that value can be anything from post event engagement that really maintains that community feel in order to drive attendees to other products or future editions of the same
Yeah.
event, or it can be more tangible. There is a potentially revenue associated with this
Mhm.
content that we can realize, whether it's through VOD offerings or repurposing the content to create derivative products. But that, again, it needs a little bit of work and a bit of a change of mindset in order to be able to think about it.
Yeah.
And then the third point, which again, I think is a really important thing, is how accessible it is to transform that content post event.
Yeah.
And the post production piece and the work that goes into finding what you want and how you want to use it. Until pretty recently, you could spend hours scrubbing through
Oh
hours
my
of
gosh,
content
yeah.
to just find the quote. Particular speaker said this thing, but you can't remember whether it was the beginning of this session or the end of that session, and you're scrubbing through. uh, And I think that where we are currently is a bit of a pivot point in terms of the
Mhm.
technology that's available. I don't think
Yeah.
it's quite there yet, but there's going to be a big shift in how accessible and how searchable our content can become, which
Mhm.
is super exciting.
It is exciting if you're doing 200 plus events a year, which you mentioned you are doing, and you've got hours of content for each of those. Yes, that's a huge lift to ask people to say, okay, go find the best parts
Yeah.
and turn them into smaller pieces everywhere. It's a lot. So it's very inspiring to hear you say, and we're all able to acknowledge there might be easier time for us on the future when it comes to the tech.
Yeah, and it's something that I'm not going to say I'm looking at it daily, but I'm very much keeping an eye on how that technology
Hmm.
is evolving and how the providers of this software are evolving their products to make video content more searchable, and
Yeah,
not just searchable, but actually using AI to surf without us even having to ask to surface the stuff, the really good stuff, which again,
that's right.
super exciting.
It's all good stuff, though,
Yeah.
especially everything you're giving me today is amazing. So it's great. All right, let's talk those specifically too. Utilizing content, getting all those pieces, and what FT does to do that. Y'all are a media brand, though. So you have your own channels already in play that we just were talking about how even your journalists have their own kind of reputation and following and stuff. So you've got all these channels as a media brand. What would be your guidance to businesses that aren't media brands like FT? How can they tackle the sharing of content for their own channels?
Absolutely, Rachel. It's a great question, and I feel very fortunate to work for the Financial Times. We have a great platform to amplify the amazing content that we produce through our events. But I think any organization shouldn't underestimate their owned platforms, right?
Yeah.
Their social channels, the platforms that they've built over time to speak to their customers and prospects. The great thing about events is that you've got so many people who are invested in your product. You've got
Yeah.
speakers, many of whom will have fantastic platforms of their own. Even your attendees, they've got platforms. So tapping into those amplification channels to get your event content out there is where the opportunities lie.
I agree. We all have those in mind, right? We all know those favorite brands out there. Oh my gosh, if I only had a following like they do, or if I only had tapped into the power of these channels like they obviously do.
I think to your point, which is an extension of that point, is we can all look with envy at these brands that have huge social media followings, some of the B2C brands. But at the same time, I know that some of my products are incredibly niche B2B events. And actually, it's not about volume, it's about value and talking to the right people. I can shout as loud as I want, but if nobody's listening, I'm just going to lose my voice. So making sure that you're targeting the right people, whether it's through earned social or paid social, that's the really key thing.
And that all drives back, like you were saying, too. That's why it's so important to pick those best parts of the content. And that's what all of us need to be doing as event planners,
Yeah.
as event marketers, and just people who are, like you said, trying to give an audience what they want and need, which all drives back to your overseeing strategy, profitability, which is something we need.
I think you also make a really good point there, and it's really key to understand what your objective is for any individual piece of content. So what part of your lead generation campaign is this speaking to, for example? Which part of the funnel? What is the objective here? Is it to raise awareness? That's going to be a very particular type of content. Or is it like further down when you're looking at conversion, when you're looking at retention, you're looking at keeping your existing customers within your universe and satisfied? So selecting the right content and selecting the right channels is going to be really important based on your objective.
Where can our listeners find and follow you online?
Great question. It is best to find me on LinkedIn. That's where I usually hang out.
Natasha reminds us as we skill up to never forget the gift of digital content, even as we all rush back to in-person gatherings.
I think you cannot underestimate the value of digital content. Post-COVID, our industry has rushed back to in-person events. Believe me, like anyone, I was never so happy as to see a self-service badge scanner as I was early in 2022. I loved getting back to in-person. But you can really leverage that additional investment in capturing your event and creating digital content and expand your reach through that. So I would really advise to be thinking about that. Start small. You don't be over ambitious. I think I am probably speaking to a bunch of perfectionists in your listenership, and I certainly identify with that. Master procrastinator, waiting for everything to be perfect. But experimental mindset. Let's just try it. Let's just take some of this content, be clear on our objectives, test it. Don't wait until you have the perfect plan for all of your event content distributed to the world. Start small, don't be overly ambitious.
Thanks again to Natasha Wood for joining us on Event Experience, and thank you for listening. If you're enjoying the show, we'd love to hear it. Connect with us on social and subscribe, rate, and review us wherever you're listening. Also, don't forget to share the show with your colleagues and friends. You can find transcripts of each episode and key takeaways on bizzabo.com/podcast. On behalf of the team, thank you. We'll gather again soon for a new episode of Event Experience.